everyone to You Are the Medicine. I am so thrilled this morning and this evening to be introducing you to somebody that has really warmed my heart. Not only warmed it, but reflected it back to me on a number of occasions. A beautiful, Aryan-looking, fabulously enjoyable to the eye woman named Tiana Rose. Tiana is just like her name. She is a blooming mentor. She invites people into her reflective space and gives them mentorship within their business. She has moved from 0 to 3 million in her coaching business within 3 years, very, very quickly. And she has been an Instagram sensation. So I'm really excited about this conversation today. Please welcome the beautiful Tiana Rose.
Oh, wow. What an introduction. I don't even know what to say now. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited for you to be here too, because just before we came on to our recording, we were having a bit of a chat about this process. And I was explaining that inside of my pillars that I work with, we look at this wounds to wisdom to wealth energy. And you could put that in a different way around purpose, power, and prosperity. It's literally what I see through all of the people that I've worked with and myself, my own journey, is that our conditioning creates a certain pattern within us. And when we realize that pattern, when we start to look with curiosity at that pattern, we can actually glean some real wisdom from that and then start to attune ourselves to a conscious direction rather than an unconscious conditioning pattern. And so that actually opens up this prosperity, this wealth within relationships, within health, within finances, every area of our business. And we were saying, oh, what if I don't have this rags to riches story? What if I don't have this deep trauma wound? And then all of a sudden I was like, I've healed and I'm amazing. What if I was already good? What if I was already good, but I wanted to be great? And what if I was great and now I want to be excellent? And I feel like this is something that possibly isn't spoken enough about. And that is why I am so thrilled to have this conversation with you. So Tiana, take us to that space that we would call the beginning, little Tiana, how she was, what her conditioning was, and why it was so good.
I would love to. I would love to. So I think when we say there was no trauma or there was no rags to riches, I think that all of us have, a level of conditioning, and I guess you could say trauma, and some are what I would call a big T trauma and some are like a little T trauma, right? But within our conditioning, there's always things that we're healing. Like, in my opinion, to be human is to be healing, right? There's always things that we need to keep healing. And so when I say, well, there was no huge event, there were some big events, but I think it's more the way I process them, where they don't feel so big because of the way my mindset works. But my conditioning and how I grew up, and the first thing, as soon as you asked me that question, the first thing that popped into my mind. So I grew up in WA, Western Australia, and I have 2 older brothers. And I grew up in what I would call, and I don't know if you know this show. Actually, you might know this show, Ramsay Street. Do you have?
Of course, we know Ramsay Street.
Yeah, right. So
Neighbours.
I grew up, yes, in like Ramsay Street, cul-de-sac, lots of kids, lots of parents, that environment. And it was incredible. It was also highly competitive.
Yeah.
So a lot of the mums would compete. Therefore, as the children grew up, and we're all the same age, a lot of the children would compete. So from a young age, I learned this really strong competitive edge. And it has been a gift, but it has also been something that I have done a lot of work on to ensure that the shadow frequency of that is clean as well. And it has definitely led me in my life, I would say, from a conditioning point of view. I was an athlete when I was young. I was a professional sprinter. Everything I've done, I've used that edge. But at the same time, it had caused friction in relationships, a lot growing up. So that was something that I really have had to really look at, especially coming in and, you start a business and a lot of your traumas, wounds, whatever we want to call them, become a magnifying glass for you to look at. Here's the mirror. So a lot of that conditioning growing up is something that I've like spent a bit of time in and looking at, how is this actually a gift? You know, like how's this shadow, or what would be perceived as a shadow? How can I play with this with the highest of frequencies rather than the lowest of frequencies? That was a little bit about my childhood. I was the youngest. I was the only girl. I was daddy's girl. I was very, very spoiled. I had a very, I would say, generous upbringing. My parents always owned businesses. So I've always grown up understanding that entrepreneurial side of business and understanding business. But probably one thing I would say is my parents worked a lot.
Right.
Because they had businesses that were like 24-hour service stations and things like that. So I did have this slight conditioning of work harder, not smarter.
Yeah.
The more you work, the better you are, the better your business is. So there's sort of some of the little things that I grew up with, throughout the tracks.
Interesting. So you can already hear, well, this because you've been working through it, but you can already hear that, yes, there's the gift inside of that conditioning, but like all of us, there's the shadow frequency, and that shadow frequency isn't to be feared. In fact, normally it's the shadow frequency that actually allows us to attune into the good to great to excellent, because we can see how our energetics are within our competitive streak, or whether it's in the feminine energy, being able to receive because you're the youngest in a family, with other boys and daddy's girl, and being, we hear a lot about that in the coaching industry at the moment. How can I receive? Because it comes back to our conditioning. And so do you feel like there has been some energy that is predisposed to being, like you said, I was a sprinter, I was a pro sprinter, to being able to sprint forward in your endeavors, but also parts where you did have to unlock that shadow to become quicker by seconds, usually in your sport?
Yeah, definitely. So I think when I say competitive, it was very much where it started to feel like it very much competitive against myself.
Right.
Because when you're sprinting, yes, you're racing against people, but it actually becomes a game of PBs.
Yeah.
And better times. And so it's this competitive edge against yourself. Now, I am also in human design, I'm a reflector. So my not self theme is disappointment. So the competitive edge actually became more about myself and steering clear of disappointment in myself.
Yes.
So I have a lot of drive. So you hear this thing in reflectors that they don't have drive, they don't have energy. Well, not that I don't have drive, that I have a lot of energy. I go against the grain of that, because I actually do have a lot of energy. So yes, that sprinting, that fierceness, that I love the start and the finish. And that's why I constantly remind myself it's about the journey. But we start on the start line and I can see the finish line, and that's where we're going.
Yeah.
And it has to be this constant, okay, stop and enjoy the journey. It's not a race, Tiana. There's no competitiveness here. You're going to get to the goal. And I do believe, and that's why I'm so blessed that was the upbringing. At the start, you'd mentioned that I'd grown my business in 3 years. It's actually only been 18 months. So I've grown it to $3 million in 18 months.
Oh my gosh.
So that has actually been this ability to keep moving and noticing things that come up, but being quicker at processing them. And that's what I think the unlock has been. I think as an entrepreneur, and for me, it's not about bypassing them. And I used to when I wasn't an entrepreneur, because I came from a corporate background. Now it's about being quicker as things come up. How much quicker can I process them and become neutral and regulated again so I can keep moving? Because sometimes not everything, this is my personal belief, needs to be 7 layers deep.
Yeah.
And a lot of things, I'd never had social media before when I started my business, as in I had a family page. I'd never had to show up and speak on camera or do anything like that. And then all of a sudden, I'm out there, what felt like on a ledge for everyone to look at. And so, of course, a lot of things come up for you. So I learned, if I'm going to sit in slow processing, my business is going to sit in slow movement. Right. So I need to get better at processing and moving.
Everyone go back, rewind, listen to that again, come back and listen to that. And this is something that I feel is, I wouldn't say it's missing, but it is it's not highlighted enough inside of the coaching industry. You know, coming myself from the kind of more trauma area, because a lot of my clients are in that kind of, I'm stuck, I can't process, and actually I don't know if I want to process. I quite enjoy being in this energy. And yet there is this real freedom in the unlocking, the real freedom, the real aha moments when you start to question your reality, question where you've been moving forward, moving backwards, sitting with the processing, enjoying the processing maybe a little bit too long. Does that sound like a judgment? But, you know, do you want to move or don't you want to move? And so there's a lot out there, I would say, and I'd like to kind of come to this maybe further down the line as we bring this through, that capitalizes on that processing being longer than it needs to be.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you came into the space, when you came into this coaching space? You said, like, I'm sat on a ledge. How did you feel that you were moving so quickly? What were the feelings? I was going to say competitively with yourself, but also with what people were reflecting back to you about your successes so quickly.
Yeah, great question. I would say it was, so when you obviously, and this is for any coach, right, regardless of whether you're new or you're well established, we all face it, right? We're holding spaces and energy for other people. And with that comes an array of different emotions, but it also comes projections, comes, you know, the full human experience. And what I think was the thing that allowed me to keep moving and process quicker was my background, which we've kind of skipped a whole part, which was when I was in corporate.
We're going to go there.
You know, yeah, pretty much my whole life. And I was in high leadership roles. So the thing that when I stepped into this space, and I didn't know the coaching industry actually before I started in it. Yeah. So I wasn't on the sidelines. I wasn't in any courses. I wasn't doing anything in the industry until I was in the industry. I found it, jumped in, and that was it. And what I knew needed to happen from my background was leadership. So I had decided in that moment, this code that like runs through my brain, it's written everywhere, my kids say it, what would leadership do? So every time I was faced with anything that was icky or challenging that we come up with when we're dealing with humans and business and all the things, I would say, what would leadership do in this moment? And it was the thing that would just keep me going, all right, process, move, do what you have to do. Like move the emotion if you have to, or this is the biggest one, the biggest gift I can give everyone, choose a better problem. Choose a better problem, because there were certain things that I was allowing to be problems that I'm like, is this actually the problem? Because I want to impact millions. I want an 8-figure-a-year business. And this thing here is the problem that I'm focused on.
Very interesting, isn't it? And I think that'll both resonate and trigger a lot of the audience.
Very much. Yeah.
Because a lot of people are wedded to their problems. You know, it actually becomes about their identity. Their problem is their identity, and to release the problem, to release and get a better problem is almost, in a way, if you haven't really gone deeper into your own identity work, in a way is being personal about their own identity, like who you are is the problem. And so if I'm got to get a better problem, then you get a better me. What are you saying about me? You know, there's a lot of kind of that energy around this fast-paced quantum speed awakening. And I'd love to know your take on that when you meet clients that potentially are in that arena.
Fast-paced, you mean, that arena?
Well, they want fast-paced, but they're kind of like, what do you mean get a better problem? That is me. That's, maybe they wouldn't use that language.
No, because I probably wouldn't use that language with them. Yeah.
But they see what you see as the problem, they see as their identity. It's part of them. So for example, with illnesses, with relationships, with their business, the way that they do things, but that's my way. What do you respond when people come in with that sort of energy?
I think that's going to come down to your ability to coach, really. So I think the way I would respond, I don't have the clients I attract. It's probably more business focused, I would say. I mean, we work on the whole human, of course, because business is the whole human, but I would probably more be inclined to ask questions. And what I've started to notice is people being the reflector, and this was a huge learning, and it was a challenging learning, I will say that. People will see themselves in me on how they want to see themselves. So a lot of the time where they think they're congruent in their life and where they feel like they're aligned in their life, they come in, and then a couple of weeks into the container, they're all of a sudden like, they're noticing things in their life and I haven't even said anything. But it's because I keep my energy, and it's work that I do to keep my energy so clean. It's like a mirror. So they're starting to see where they're maybe not congruent, or not congruent, but they want to tighten things up behind the scenes or whatever. So if someone said to me, but that's how I do it, and I'd say, great. So are you getting the result that you want from it? In anything in life, if you don't want to, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So if you don't actually want to look at, could you potentially be not the problem, but could there be an evolution point here or an elevation point? If you are happy with the result that you've currently got, then keep doing what you're doing. But if you've come for actual mentoring, then let's do it.
It's really powerful because it sounds so common sense.
And I know, and it doesn't feel common sense.
It's and I come across it a lot. It's, you know, there's this, and we're going to move into that mindset, and I'd love to go into where that kind of corporate edge, you know, came from, that sport and then into the corporate. Because I also worked in corporate, and there's no bullshit. You've just got to get on with it. You know, there's a lot of money, a lot of profit, a lot of heads at stake. So you need to move forward. And I feel like there's quite a lot of people that are wanting to be potentially like where you are in your business, that will be listening to this, see that speed, are like, wow, you know, she's gone really fast. She, you know, she coaches, she mentors. This is amazing. I can do that. And like you said, particularly as a reflector, I can do that. Okay, what's the measurement between where I am and where the energy is to meet that version of myself? And yet, although it sounds common sense, there's so much in the way of the knowing it and the doing it.
Yeah.
What are the things for you personally that are a non-negotiable to get you from knowing it to doing it?
The foundations. So knowing firstly what I'm aiming for, knowing my why I'm aiming for it, and having a business that is built purely off values. Lovely. So when I notice something and I'm like, oh, I know this, and, you know, we do have to do identity work. Like you said, I actually think probably self-mastery would be probably one of the biggest things we do as an entrepreneur. It's me going, that is the value. That is what I value most. I built a values-based business. I can either stay here, or I can make the decision to move closer to being congruent with who I say I be as a leader and my values. The longer I don't align in congruency, I fall out of alignment and I feel really shitty about it. And I only do things to actually make myself feel better, not to feel shitty.
This is such a big key that is coming up with all of these conversations. Is
it? Okay.
Yeah, you know, the congruence piece. And I think there's a lot banded around the personal development space about authenticity. And actually, authenticity, for me anyway, is showing up as who you are at all times. But that can be different each day. Whereas congruency and integrity are, like you said, being your word. And first of all, your word to yourself, you know, being your value, being, and that being is then in alignment. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings around the word alignment as well. And what the fuck does that mean? You know, are you in alignment with this? I'm like, I don't know. What am I in alignment with? I'm in alignment with whatever I'm doing and being right now, but do I want to be somewhere else? Like you said, the result. What result do you want to get? Okay, well, this is who you've got to be to get that result.
It's simple in strategy, but it's depending on your conditioning, where you're coming from. there are going to be things that you need to do and things that you need to look at. And some of those things, if they keep you stagnant and they keep coming up and repeating themselves in your relationships and your business, 7 layers deep, go for it. Everything else, move quicker, process quicker.
So bring us to the corporate world then. Bring us then, like you said, it's easy in strategy, but there's you know, and the corporate world is full of it. And we'll come to energetics afterwards, but give us an idea of who Tiana was walking into that arena, that stage.
Yeah, so I worked for a very large fashion retailer here, very large here, and I worked my way up. So I came in as like a regional manager and worked my way all the way to the top. And where I was blessed, I was with this company for 9.5 years. I left at 9.5 years right before my long service. And the leadership that you gain from working in a company where the culture is one of absolute, pure, mature leadership is unmatched anywhere I've ever seen. And you are dealing with, because I'm going to explain why, you are learning as a human to manage up in relationships, manage sideways, and manage down in relationships.
Your 360.
And in that structure is really the only place you get to do that. Because then when you start your own business, you're not managing up to anyone, right? You know, you're not really doing that. And so learning the art of communication, learning the art of influence, learning who you are. Like we come into these and we start a business, especially online. It's like, what do you want to be known for? Like, you know, what is your it factor? You know, like, what is it? How are you helping people? You also have that in your own, like that's part of your identity in corporate. And I think so often people are like, oh, I work for someone, it's 9 to 5, I'm putting on their identity. But it's like, well, no, what if you find your own identity and your own legacy that you can bring inside that corporate world? And that was very much the role that I played in the business I played in. And it, like, for me, it was an incredible business and an incredible foundation for where I am now. I wouldn't be the coach I am, because in that business, I coached thousands of people, right? That was my role. So it was, to me, it was like an obvious choice to move into coaching.
And so give us a moment inside of that 9.5-year career where you realized you were in your potency, you know, a moment where you were like, dang,
I've nailed this.
Yeah.
It was, so in this particular business, they have a board. The board fly on separate jets, just to put it into perspective on the size of this business. And it was, we had these big meetings, and obviously it was about the numbers and the profit and things like that, but also the people and the culture and what we're doing in strategy and what we're doing moving forward. And it was always, I guess you would say, the board that would sort of speak, and I got invited in to speak. And I remember I had prepared, you know, all the documents and had it all ready, and, you know, I was going in and I was going to nail it. And then I got in there and everyone's in their suit and like it's the boardroom, right? And I got in there and I remember just putting it all down on the table and being like, they're human and I'm human, and I'm going to show up as a human in this conversation. I'm going to speak about people first, numbers second. I love numbers. I'm give me a profit and loss statement any day. So I could do that well. And I'm like, but I'm going to shift the energy to what we're creating in this room today, rather than just repeat numbers that they can read off a spreadsheet, which is what everyone does. And it was a big gamble because everything goes a certain way. You have a list of things you have to cover. And I remember standing there and doing that and seeing aha moments go off, seeing the conversation around what we could do with teams and training that we could get teams and this development of teams. And that's what I was so passionate about. Like, how can we develop people more, which is why I do now what I do. And when I saw all of that, I realized in that moment that my leadership, my ability to influence, when I trust myself and my own voice, that my intention is pure.
I like that.
And the background, I've got goosebumps, the background of that and the flow on and the training programs and executive coaches and things that flew up, like it was, it's incredible.
And, you know, like you said, you could feel that your intention was pure, but what was the feeling? You know, what came through you at that moment?
It's really funny. The feeling is almost So being a reflector, my alignment theme's like surprise, but
Mm-hmm.
I like to word it as like I think people think it's like surprise. It's not really that. I mean, I love that, but it's more this like surprise and delight. Like it's like this like good at landing with them. Like it's like awe. It's like an
Yes.
awe feeling. And I could feel it landing, and I could feel myself going in and being up here and not grounded at all. And as I'm speaking and as it's starting to like channel through, you know, when things just channel and you're on flow and it's just like it's a transmission. And I felt as that was happening, it's like source almost speaking through you is the way. I felt my feet ground and ground and ground, and my feet were solid, and I knew who I was. And the biggest thing that I've had to work through is, who am I? So when you said identity work, being a reflector, who am I? Because I'm reflecting other people all the time. Who am I? And I knew in that moment, that's who I am. And even to this day, when I'm about to do a big training or a big, you know, masterclass or anything like that, I actually tap back into that feeling of that grounded feet. Here we go. Like, that's who you are. That's the leadership you stand for.
Delicious, delicious, delicious. I love that. And it brings us right into that next piece, because, you know, we're talking about you are the medicine. You know, this is the overarching theme of this series, that, you know, there is nothing outside of you that necessarily you need to chase after. In fact, if you turn inward, what magically happens is that it all starts to come towards you. And it's very much a different way that we are operating now to, let's say, the way our parents did, at least consciously, very much, you know, in our ancestral lines, there may have been really powerful entrepreneurship or, you know, exciting movement towards their purpose of life. But a lot of the time it was an unconscious drive. Whereas now we're in this space where you can identify a moment. I now tap back into that moment because I know that that is the feeling of alignment. Like I feel it like it's an integrity. Everything is just like, lines up beautifully. And like you said, there's this channel, this source. It's not me anymore. It's not my ego. It's something I can't fully describe, but I know it's working through me. I'm not dragging it into me. And so talk to us about, you know, that moment, that awakening moment, and then bringing it out into this new purpose, this new evolution, this new elevation, this next step of unfolding of Tiana and who you become in that process, taking that wisdom and moving it into this wealth, literal physical wealth, but also who you be now.
I love that question. And I think I love visuals. So, you know, when you're like, it's like a clicking together, the way I almost see it is, it's almost like, picture it right now, if white light, gold light, whatever color turns you on, flows through your body, can it flow down in a tube? Or does it get sort of stuck, right? When I'm in alignment and I'm grounded, it's like this flowing through me up and down without sort of getting stuck. And I mean, things still do get stuck. I'm human, but that's when I know that I'm in this level. And it's funny because that moment wasn't source or God, or, I mean, you can believe what you want to believe, but for me, it's actually just my higher self. Right. It's just who I am. But when there's no ego attached, when there's no concept of self attached, when there's no conditioning attached, she gets to shine.
This is really powerful because, you know, let's go there, because this is who we are. You are a business mentor. And the language that you are using is spiritual language. What can you see at the moment for yourself, for your clients, and for the industry at large, where these two potentially perceived opposites are actually starting to come together in a really beautiful synergy?
What I believe, and what I know just from, you know, and I have clients that, you know, are also making, you know, a lot of money and stepping into, you know, further levels of wealth, but also self-mastery is what I would say. I believe as a business mentor or even a business coach, like, yes, I believe stay in your lane and only coach and mentor on things that you qualified or you have experience in, of course. But I also believe it's actually not just like the amount of business conversation I actually have on the calls with my clients is probably like 20% of the call. You know, the other 40% is the whole human work. And it's the spirituality, it's the who we be, it's the identity work, it's the relationship building. Like, there's so many different aspects because we're a full human. And regardless of whether, you know, you're female, male, or who, you know, what you identify as, I find that this is the same across the board with my clients. And I think the worlds do really merge together in this new paradigm. I think in the old paradigm, it's not that they didn't, but it was almost not spoken about, and no one probably was brave enough to have the voice to bring it together. But in this new paradigm, for me, it's almost, you wouldn't do one without the other, because we need alignment in all areas of our life in order to succeed in any area of our life. And we're a human in a human 3D world.
I love it. And, you know, again, my reflection to the reflector is always that it's very, the way in which you share it is very common sense. It's very easily A to B. And of course, that's your own personal energy, you know, A to B, this is how we get there. It's that simple. Are we all going? Are we going there? And there's a real upliftment to that. There's a real beauty in, you know, being able to see these deeper global and societal shifts, and then, like you said, reflect it back. So with that said, take us into the moment that you started to know you were a reflector and what that meant. And you're like, you know, what is human design? How did I get into that? And how has that now assisted you in cultivating your medicine to give to yourself and to others?
Yeah. Well, it's actually funny. We didn't actually mention this, but I started this business as a human design coach, business coach.
Brilliant.
So I actually started in human design, and I actually don't remember how I came across it, but it was when I was still very much working in corporate, and I had just had Ocean. She's turning 5 in a couple of weeks. So she was like, this is like 5-6 years ago, right? Because I don't even know if I might have been pregnant or I just had her. I remember it was like at a point where I was like, who am I?
Yeah.
And it was when there was an identity going on. So I was either pregnant or
pregnant will do that to you.
Yeah, right. And I found human design, and I got all my birth details and I popped it in. And I'd sort of heard these words, human design, but I didn't really understand it, and maybe a little bit skeptical. You know, I'm a quad-left in human design, so I'm very structured and logical and all the things. And I saw that it was a reflector, and it's the 1% of the human race. And so I'm not sure if your audience knows, but there's 5 types. I won't go into all, but they can Google it if they want to. And I'm the 1%. And I remember going, okay, I like being the 1%. That suits me just fine. Until I started reading about it. And you don't have any consistent energy. You have to wait 28 days for a moon to do a full cycle to make a decision. You are a projection screen, so people will project onto you. You're a walking mirror. Like, all of this started to come, and then I'm like, I won't be that anymore. I'm good not to be that. Yeah. But deep down, it was like, my whole life has now just made sense.
Yeah.
Everything. We're classed as highly sensitive beings, because we can feel, like sitting here now, I can feel your energy. I can feel you at an exponential level. And what people, I think, miss though, and reflectors, if there's any reflectors watching that they miss, we don't absorb. So other human design types, they will feel energy and absorb it and then question if it's theirs, if it's not theirs, it can get stuck, all of this. Reflectors are actually like Teflon. So we will feel it, but it kind of like bounces off. But we still feel it to an exponential level. And so all of a sudden my world made sense. Then I'm like, I need to know more about this human design, because I started doing it with my friends and seeing how their world made sense. So I studied it, got my certification, became a human design coach. Then as I started mentoring, so I moved from human design business. I never just did human design, I did human design and business together. And then I've sort of moved, I still use it as a tool, but it's not sort of the force of my business now. I started noticing when clients would come in, certain behaviors that they would all start to do in a very short amount of time. and they're very different clients. And I would notice them, like they would come in, for example, and they might not have ever mentioned their relationship with their partners. It might not have ever been a mention. Now, my husband and I, we've been married for 7 years, and we have the most divine relationship. We're human. We still do all the human marriage things that humans do, but we do have a really conscious, co-creative relationship. And when they would come in, and we wouldn't even really be talking about relationships, but like the mirror in me, it's like they could almost feel that energy and start to see, well, I don't quite have that. See where I need to clean that up and that up and that up, because that feels really clean there. And now I'm being reflected to me where it's not clean. And so all of a sudden, then they wanted to start working on their relationship, and then we'd get that clean, and then we'd do something else. And so I started noticing this pattern of when people come in, my role as a reflector, and where I've used it in my business, where it's also a big responsibility, is squeaky clean energy.
Yeah.
I have to do so much work to ensure that my mirror is actually not smudged. Because if I'm in dysregulation, if I'm in any sort of lower frequency shadow, my clients can't clearly see themselves.
Yeah.
And my role is to see pure potential. And I can't see that and reflect that if I'm not clean. So that's been the biggest gift from human design, and how I've used it in my business. And it's so funny now, in all my masterminds and everywhere I play, the first thing clients goes, Tiana, can you please reflect this? Tiana, I've got a question. Can you give me a rift on this? Because they know that I'll give them a rift on my opinion and my mindset, but I'll also give them a rift based on what I'm feeling. They're actually asking me based on their energy.
It's beautiful. I mean, obviously I've experienced this myself. And it feels like there is, when you say it's clean energy, I think this is something that a lot of people get to hear now, that it's not about taking things personally. I think there's been a lot of that inside of the coaching and mentoring industry, because there's a lot of reflection inside of these containers. And yet some of that reflection is actually based on projection. And
correct.
Yeah, the projection of the coach, how the coach or the mentor is bringing their own stuff to the client, and vice versa. Yeah. And so this clean energy that I really kind of want to just explore a little bit here is walking into your wealth, so your medicine for the world. Do you feel like, as we start to move into a more conscious society, a more self-aware energy, whether we're in coaching, whether we're not, whatever we're doing in our life, the key is, whether you're a reflector or not, to be in that squeaky clean energy, whatever that means for you, your genuine alignment, your genuine clean energy. Is that the direction we're going? Is that what you get to bring to the world? Or is there something
Can I say that again? Or is there
something else?
No, so this is it, right? And I know we do hear a lot about like squeaky clean energy and clean energy, but when like you, as a coach or mentor, we just use that for now, it's like it's a responsibility that you have, right? And if you haven't done your own inner healing or inner work, and it's forever work, again, to be human is to heal, you do need to be mindful, if you are going to reflect something, that it's not an opinion or a projection based on your own conditioning, right? You have to be so clear on that. And I think what can happen is people muddy what a reflection actually is as well. So for a client, I'm not just like, I will call out blind spots. I am definitely I'm going to tell you what I honestly see, not what you want to hear. Like, people are paying me money for transformation. I'm going to deliver that. But I will always still say, hey, I think there's something to explore here. Are you open to looking at this?
Yeah.
Right. Still being not just, this is my opinion on what you should do. It's more, how can we be better at reflecting, but still getting our clients to come to the answers themselves? And I think that's where it's this constant, because the thing is, and what we have to be so mindful of, is we can actually plant a thought for someone else that doesn't need to be a thought for someone else. Right? Like, we can actually say something, and I see this happen a lot, and even in my relationship, I'm like, that doesn't need to be a thought for me now, and something was even said in somewhere I was the other day, and I'm like, that's in my head now. that didn't need to be my thought.
Yeah.
You know, so I think we have to be very mindful of, can I just give you a reflection? Can I just give you a reflection? Like, I think we have to use our mature leadership in this and our emotional intelligence.
I like both of those things, mature in leadership and our emotional intelligence. And I think, you know, what you're saying there is, yes, we get to be squeaky clean. Yes, we get to see where we are reflecting, but that takes self-awareness. That takes a deeper contemplation of self. And that in itself takes a leadership. And so there's this kind of cosmic cycle of ever evolving self-awareness, self-congruence, self-attunement over and over and over. And what I found, I'd be interested to know what you find, is at the beginning, it can be a little bit over-consuming, but then it becomes part of who you are. And it is, like you said, where's my next PB? Where, you know, where do I get to clean this energy up? Where can I start to create momentum in my life through found it, cleaned it, processed it, let my emotions come through me and out of me. Now I don't need to get them landed on someone else. And like you said, we're human. We experience these things, and we also get to be human too. So with that kind of understanding, with that, and I love that it's Tiana Rose, because for me, when I feel into your energy, it is like this blooming energy of, well, what's the next petal? What's the next, you know, what's the next layer? What's the next level? What's the next bit of curiosity we can look under there? And you mentioned this word neutrality, which I think from my experience of your energy is such a key to moving forward. Can you give us a little bit around that?
This will tie into that. There's something as well that I was with squeaky clean energy, and I have people say this, how do you know when you're clean?
Yeah.
Right. Because we have emotions, and, you know, especially if you're an emotional authority, and, you know, there's things that will come up for you. Right. But you're clean energy, but you still have emotions and stuff. You actually know when you're clean because it's an inner state of like calmness. I think when you don't feel like you've got clean energy, it almost feels like, to me, I don't want to use the word dysregulation because it's a bit of a harsher word for what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
But you just know that there's something a little bit off guard. It doesn't mean you can't be an incredible coach or mentor or still do your role. But in those moments, you have to really go, I can see something for this client here. Let me just have a little bit of a pause moment here just to check that this isn't mine. Right. I think it's just those, but what will happen at first, like you said, it's consuming, and you'll be like, that's all I'm doing is thinking about what I'm thinking about. And that's personal development, right? We think about our thoughts, like it's like, but it gets quicker, and you get to process quicker, and then you get quicker momentum, and then everything starts to move quicker.
Yeah, and it is beautiful at that point. And so I want to invite you now to share with us kind of what's your vision moving forward? What do you see, you know, from this young girl, like you said, in this Ramsey Street environment that has understood now her conditioning, has given her gifts and also levels where she can attune herself, gone into this incredible business, really made an impact, understood that actually how she can make an impact is by being more human, which ironically is a bit more divine, and, you know, and allowing that energy to come through, and then taking that out into the world, like you said, into your relationship with your partner, into the relationship with your daughter, into the relationship with your clients, your family, your friends, your arena, and then the impact, the ripple that gets to be created from there. What's this centrifugal force now creating in the world for you?
Oh, goosebumps. I think for me, this is funny because it is going to be more divine. I think, and, you know, I was going to say this will link into this actually. I think the reason spirituality as well, and then business mentoring, is 80 to 90, maybe 95, depends on where you sit, lives in energetics. And energetics it's in the field of spirituality, right? And quantum and all of that. So I think that's why there's that union. And I think for me, it's where the impact that I desire to have, and it's huge. Like the impact is like, I said the other day, I didn't just want to be a coach in the coaching industry, which is amazing. So I shouldn't say just, I didn't build my business to only be a coach in the coaching industry. Like I want legacy for my daughters. I want to be, we want to be known for leadership. We want to be known for impacting lives. Like, this is what, like, we're building something big in an empire here.
Mm-hmm.
But what my actual, and every client that I have, yes, I want to help them make money. I'm a business mentor. Like, of course I want to help them make money, but I want them to feel so fucking good why they make the money. You know, like, yeah, you can make money quickly, but do you feel good? Do you have a life? Do you have freedom? Do you have any of the things and the reason why you're making money?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's how can I help more people know who they are, understand who they are, choose leadership in every moment, self-leadership, but also leading others.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, there's so much talk on self-led,
mm-hmm.
and I believe in self-led, but then where does leading others come into this?
Mm-hmm.
How do you lead your children? How do you lead in your relationship? How do you lead? And building their own legacies and having bigger conversations, that it's not just about what the next step in front of them is. Like, how can we start talking what their bigger impact is, whether it's for their family, whatever their why is or their value is, but how can we start bringing bigger conversations to the humanness of what we're doing
Mm-hmm.
than just this next step in front of me or this next milestone?
And what is the impact of that? You know, what is the impact of that longer term? What do you see when people start looking at the longer term vision for themselves? What's the bigger impact there when more of us are doing that?
Purpose. People are operating from fulfillment and purpose. So instead of, what I find can happen is people can get stuck. That's a projection. For some, they can get stuck in this loop because they don't know what they want to do. They don't know where they're heading, right? And I get that. I have been there. Like, I used to sit in procrastination so much, where I knew I was meant for more, but I didn't know what more was. And I've been there, and it's like one of the worst feelings, right? The bigger impact is every human will be walking towards purpose that's impact led. So it's like this ripple effect that when you are operating from fulfillment and impact for the highest good of all, of course, because I'm trusting that everyone watching this is a good human, then it only affects the person in front of you and the person behind you. So if we're all affecting the people in front of us and the people behind us, that spreads for generations.
Mm-hmm.
That spreads for multiple, like that's lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing more fulfilling. There's nothing more on purpose than waking up and knowing what you're here to do. Not waking up and going, what the should I post today?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And obviously that resonates with my heart. You know, I feel this so deeply. You know, we share this commonality. And I think there is this deeper understanding inside of all of these different industries that are popping at the moment, that are developing. Because really, you know, what my teachers anyway kind of brought to me before any of this was like it within social media, I felt very isolated, because it was a very much, this is how we're going to run business, this is how we're going to be in purpose, this is what the impact of the world is, etc. And it felt so massive like 10, 15 years ago, when I was only starting to wake up. And now we're here. And there are minds and hearts coming online and questioning and going, what is my purpose? If I'm building a business, what does that really mean? What is it really for? What's the point of all of this? And I feel like the people that are coming to that question are within their 30s, their 40s, possibly older, but they're that Rubicon, and we're all sort of waking up and going, hold on. If this world needs to change, there's only one place it can start, and that's inside of me. But when I do the work, I can truly impact massive. And so I see that in you. I see that energy in you. And I'd love you to kind of give our audience something that they can take away with themselves that will bring them deeper into their own purpose. You know, you are the medicine. If I am the medicine, if you are the medicine, then what do we get to share with our audience right now from your perspective?
I would say right now, and I mean, I don't know your audience, but there'll be different levels happening and different thoughts going on for people right now, different activations taking place. A lot of people will go, some people will leave this feeling really inspired and be like, what am I doing tomorrow? Like, what is that thing? The thing that I would invite you into right now, if you're feeling activated in any way, whether that's a positive activation or a not so positive activation, whatever is happening for you right now. And FYI, I'm just reflecting you, whatever is happening. Is that the best get out of jail card? What I would invite you into is to not think about what is that next step. So at the moment, you'll hear people say, just take the next step, take the next step. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
What I do, but I don't. I'm going to explain. I believe is you are here now, wherever that might be. What is when you think about, if I said to you now, what's your 10-year goal? And don't be logical, that feeling inside you, and you get it, and then you shut it down. So you already got it. Everyone just got that picture. What is your 10-year goal? You all got a little spark, a little vision. But then instantly your human, maybe for some, shut it down. Even for me, my human still does go, like, is that possible? I then would invite you, your medicine is that person who's in 10 years' time, that vision you have, be that identity now. So that next step, so this is where you now start taking the steps, is ask yourself, anchor in that vision, whatever that vision was, see it, anchor it, start asking yourself, what would she do? What would he do? Would he do this? Would he do that? And start moving that way rather than just what is tomorrow's step. This is how we collapse time in the quantum.
Yes, it is. And it's such an amazing reminder, isn't it? To be like, go out there, go and see what it is that your higher self already knows. That in my language anyway, that the codex is already there for. If everything is now, if we're using quantum energetics and everything is now, then go and have a look at that pinpoint in what you call 10 years time, but is still actually now, and bring it to you. Bring it to you by being her, being him right now. What a powerful...
And it keeps you... Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, what a powerful, simple way.
Simple.
Yeah.
It keeps your human... It keeps the energetics alive, but it keeps your human moving as well, because you will actually start to, when I made that comment before, find a bit better problem, like choose your problems basically, and sometimes choose a better one if you need to. You're going to make yourself, because that vision is going to start feeling closer and closer and closer, that you're not going to want to play in a frequency that's not serving of that. And I think the other thing is as well, if it comes through you, it's for you.
Yes.
You can't actually visualize something that you can't have. So when you're anchoring that, like, I make it sound so logical. I grew my business. I did the thing. I chose good problems. I processed faster. Like, I've made that sound so easy. Did I ever think that I would hit $3 million in 18 months of a brand new business? Never. I couldn't even actually visualize that. Did you know? I wouldn't even say that was part of the visualization that I had. I didn't, but I just kept making decisions the whole way along, going, who is the person that's running the empire? What would she do right now? Keep moving, Tiana, keep moving, and just keep anchoring back into that. And I just kept collapsing time the whole way. Yeah. And I followed the breadcrumbs. I followed breadcrumbs. And I continue to follow breadcrumbs.
I love it.
Success leaves clues. Success
leaves clues, as does your higher self.
Which is really the success leaving the clue, right?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. There's so much more we get to explore here. I feel like we need to have a series. There's so much more we get to explore, but I want you to share with everyone now where they can find you, where they can, connect with you. And if they feel aligned and this has really sparked them open, they can come and get content, be part of your world. Where do we go? Yes.
I would love you to come and join my world. Come say hello. So my Instagram is at Tiana Rose, TIANAROSE.inc. INC. So come over, come say hi. Come let me know whether this activated you, what happened.
Oh, it will activate them for sure.
The problems you're choosing, whatever it is.
Tiana, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your medicine with us today. And I'm so looking forward to seeing your impact and everyone else's impact, but your impact as you start to elevate and swiftly move into your evolution. It's a delight. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Mary Kay. You are an absolute, You're not from Earth. You're not from Earth.
I don't know where I'm from.
Oh,